Daniel hadn't slept much the night before. His daughter Lily had come down with a cough again, and the small heater in their apartment had stopped working. He'd sat beside her through the night, keeping a damp cloth on her forehead, whispering stories from the books he used to read to his late wife. At dawn, he slipped out of bed and checked the plastic folder that held his resume, carefully ironed and reprinted the night before at the library. Today's job interview was the first one he'd landed in weeks. If this didn't work out, he wasn't sure how much longer he could keep the lights on. He wore his only clean dress shirt, slightly too large in the shoulders, and a faded blazer he'd found months ago at a thrift store. It was raining lightly, and Daniel didn't have an umbrella, but he moved quickly through the park, using a grocery bag to shield the documents. His shoes, cracked at the soles, made a soft squeaking sound with every step. He glanced at his watch. 22 minutes to get to the firm. Just enough time if he didn't stop. That's when he heard it. The sound was unmistakable, a child crying. Not just a whimper, but an uncontrollable sob that cut through the damp morning air. Daniel froze mid-stride, torn between the instinct to help and the weight of everything riding on this interview. He turned his head slowly toward the source. Beneath a curved iron bench near the edge of the park's fountain, a little girl in a white dress sat curled into herself, her shoulders trembling violently. He walked over cautiously. "Are you lost?" he asked softly, keeping his distance so as not to startle her. She didn't respond. Her tiny hands were clenched around the fabric of her dress, muddy and damp. Her ponytail was soaked, and her knees were scraped as if she had fallen. Daniel looked down at the folder in his hand. The seconds were slipping away. But something inside him, a reflex born from years of raising his daughter alone, overpowered the ticking clock. He kneeled beside the child, removed his blazer without thinking, and draped it over her shoulders. "Let's find your parents, okay?" What followed was a chaotic hour of searching. Daniel guided her through the winding park paths, asking passers-by if anyone recognized the child. The girl, who barely whispered her name as Emily, refused to let go of his hand. Her fear clung to her like a second skin. Despite the rain, despite the missed opportunity, Daniel kept walking, scanning the faces around them. Finally, near the park's eastern exit, a black limousine came skidding to a halt on the curb. Two sharply dressed men leapt out. One of them, a stern-faced man with silver hair and gloves, shouted, "Miss Emily!" The girl cried out and ran toward him. The man swept her into his arms and turned a suspicious eye to Daniel. "Where did you find her?" he asked, voice cold. "In the park," Daniel replied calmly. "She looked lost and hurt." "You should have called the number on her bracelet," the man snapped, now noticing the mud stains on Daniel's sleeves. "We've been looking everywhere." Before Daniel could explain further, the girl turned to him, tugging the man's sleeve. "Can he come with us?" she asked, her eyes pleading. "I want him to come home." The older man's lips pursed in disapproval, but after a long pause, he opened the limo door. Daniel hesitated. He had no idea what he was walking into. But something about the girl's small hand still clinging to his made it impossible to walk away. The limousine's interior smelled of leather and roses. As they drove, the girl explained between sips of warm tea that she had wandered off during a picnic and no one had noticed until it was too late. Daniel listened quietly, nodding, still soaked from the rain. His resume folder now warped and useless on his lap. When they arrived, Daniel's eyes widened. The mansion looked like it had been plucked from the pages of a European estate magazine. 3 stories of arched windows, a circular driveway framed by marble statues, and a wrought iron gate that clicked shut behind them like the final note of a symphony. He followed the girl inside, unsure if he should remove his shoes, unsure if he belonged at all. The foyer glowed with chandeliers, and a grand staircase spiraled upward like a sculpture. A woman in a slate-gray pantsuit descended with the kind of confidence Daniel had only ever seen in business documentaries. Her heels clicked against the marble as she approached. "Emily," she breathed, hugging the girl with surprising gentleness. Then her eyes shifted to Daniel. She looked him up and down, the wrinkled shirt, the damp clothes, the folder tucked under his arm, and her expression froze. The woman's eyes flicked over Daniel's soaked appearance, the limp resume folder he still clutched like armor, and the little girl standing beside him, still wrapped in his blazer. She arched an eyebrow, clearly assessing the situation. But before she could speak, Emily tugged on her hand and pointed to Daniel. "He helped me, Mommy. He found me and stayed with me even though he was in a hurry." The woman's features softened, almost imperceptibly. She extended a hand. "I'm Victoria Kingsley. Thank you for bringing my daughter back." Her grip was firm but warm. Daniel introduced himself quietly, feeling as though he didn't belong in the room. This world of polished wood floors, priceless artwork, and generations of wealth etched into every corner. Yet Emily wouldn't let go of his hand. She led him past the velvet drapes and crystal chandeliers into a sitting room more luxurious than anything he had seen in real life. Victoria gestured for the butler to bring Daniel a towel and something hot to drink. Then she turned to her daughter. "Sweetheart, why don't you go get changed? I'll talk to Mr. Daniel here." Once Emily disappeared up the staircase, Victoria sat down across from him, her posture straight, her presence formidable. Daniel, still dripping and uneasy, began to explain everything. The job interview he had missed, the moment he saw the girl crying, how he couldn't bring himself to walk away. He didn't dramatize it. He didn't ask for thanks. He simply spoke. Victoria listened in silence, nodding occasionally, her eyes never leaving his face. When he finished, she leaned back slightly and studied him in a way that wasn't condescending, but deeply analytical, as if she were sizing up not his clothes but his character. "You missed a job interview to help a stranger," she said finally. "That's rare." Daniel only offered a tired smile. "I figured the job wasn't meant to be, if helping a child meant losing it." For a moment, Victoria didn't say anything. Then she stood. "Come with me." He followed her through the marble halls and into what looked like a home office. There, books lined every wall, and a mahogany desk sat under a massive window overlooking the estate gardens. She pulled a chair out and gestured for him to sit. "I run a philanthropic tech fund," she said, retrieving a folder from the drawer. "One of our biggest challenges is finding people who still value character over credentials, instinct over ego. People who don't just talk about leadership, they live it quietly." She placed a fresh copy of his resume on the desk. Somehow, she had already retrieved a digital version. "I read this while Emily was telling me about you. Your background in logistics, the years you stepped back to care for your daughter, the jobs you took just to keep going. It says more to me than degrees ever could." Daniel sat stunned, unsure of where this was going. "I want you to come work for us," Victoria continued. "Not as charity, not out of pity. I believe we need people like you at the table. People grounded in real life." He blinked, struggling to process. "But I was just a walk-in applicant. You don't even know me." "I know enough," she replied, then smiled. "Besides, Emily trusts you. That's a reference I take seriously." Weeks later, Daniel started his new role. The salary was better than anything he'd imagined. The office had child-friendly hours. More than that, Victoria herself mentored him, helping him refine his skills, giving him the kind of access and belief no one else ever had. He brought Lily to work some days, and Emily and she became close friends. But that was only the beginning. Nearly a year later, at a company gala, Daniel stood with his daughter by the dessert table, watching as guests marveled at a towering white cake dusted with real gold leaf and delicate sugar flowers. A server whispered that the design had been based on Emily's drawing of "the best day ever." That day, Daniel had found her in the rain. Victoria approached him, wearing a soft blue gown. "Do you recognize the cake?" He smiled. "Hard to forget. It's beautiful." She looked at him with a glint of amusement. "It's your daughter's design. And you know who baked it?" He turned confused. "Me," she said. "I used to bake before the business took over. Emily insisted we make it together. I hadn't touched an oven in 10 years. Daniel stared at her, the weight of the moment settling in. All the paths that could have gone differently, all the reasons he had to walk past that crying girl. Yet he hadn't. And now, standing in a room filled with opportunity, warmth, and the laughter of his daughter and Emily spinning across the dance floor, he realized something. Sometimes the decisions that seem like detours, missed chances, rainy interruptions, lost interviews, are actually doors opening to the kind of life you never thought you deserved. But someone else did. And they held it open for you.